Hi everyone, G Smith 624 here, and if you're watching this video, then you are confused about how to set up your class for Season 2 of For Honor. Basically, you're here because A, you find some mechanic that you didn't find before bothering you, like Bleed is a very good example here, or the stat changes on your character were changed so much from what they used to be, you want to change them a little more to how you had it, or the third and final option, you just don't really understand the new system and how it works. And so you're looking for a little guidance in that department. And that is what we are here to do today. So we'll start off here by going over each piece of equipment and what it does. All three of the weapon components of a character will add to the attack. The attack stat is not your base stat attack. So if you thought my stat attack, like my basic damage, is not doing enough, or if you thought you were in the negatives and you thought you would be doing literally 0 damage, don't worry. The attack damage just amplifies or negafies? Makes your attack do more or less damage. Basically, for example here, this blade hilt adds plus 2.9%. So, if we were just going off of this alone, regardless of the other two stats that add to or minus to attack, this would increase my base damage by 2.9%. That means I would be doing just a little bit more damage. The same can be said here, I would be doing 2.2% less damage. However, when going for attack, you have to memorize and realize that all three pieces are a key feature of your attack. So, in total, my attack here is at minus 3.2, but then you add the 2.9 to that. So, if any of you know the math there off the top of your head, it is 0.5% in the negative. So my attacks will be doing 0.5 less damage than they normally would be doing. And that is how my build is set up on my Centurion. Now the next thing we'll go to is on the blade, the main part of the blade, defense penetration. What does it do, and is it a viable stat to have? Defense penetration, well, before we go into that, it'll probably be helpful if I go into defense. Defense increases the base amount of damage you can take. So each character has a little more damage they can take, has more health. This does not increase your max health. This does increase how much damage each hit will do, though. So with this setup, I have a plus 1% to damage I can take. Nothing crazy there. Just make sure, it's just there to make sure that I can survive base hits normally, pretty much, with a little extra cushion on top of it. So I might just survive with a sliver of health for combos. Now what defense penetration does, however, is it negates defense. So for example, if I had 10 defense, let's just say I had 10% plus 10% to defense. With my defense penetration at 5.5%, that means that 10% that the player has that I am attacking was negated down to 4.5%. So it means that he's only blocking half the initial damage he wanted to block because of defense penetration. Now we'll go into the third topic of this blade, which is block damage. My block damage is currently at 0%, so it has at the base stat line for it. What block damage does is quite simply make it so when you are guarding an attack, a heavy attack to be precise, the chip damage you take is not more than you usually take. And what I mean by that is block damage has always been a thing in For Honor, even if you didn't fully understand what it did. Chip damage is caused from block damage. Chip damage is even if you blocked a heavy attack, and this is for only heavies, light attacks you block do not cause chip. it means a block damage or chip damage. Essentially, you take more damage even though you were blocking. Like, it's just a little extra on top, even though you blocked the full hit, so you don't take full damage, but it's just a tiny bit getting through your defenses. That is what chip damage is. But if you have the block damage in the negatives, then that chip damage becomes more severe. Next, we'll move on to execution, health regen, and revive speed. First, execution, health regen. When you successfully get off an execution, you will gain a base amount of health. Usually it's about a single bar. Increasing execution health regen increases how much health you get back in return. It can be upwards to 4 bars if you have your execution health regen and you get to a certain amount and you get the execution off. Now, the key thing to remember about execution health regen is it does not matter unless you get the execution off. And what I mean by that is you fully get it off, they are dead, can't be revived. Like, you weren't interrupted for that, or you started it, got kicked away, and they can be revived. You don't get the health bonus from that. The person has to be fully dead in order to get that execution health regen. Now, having it in the negatives means you would get less than 1 bar of health back for doing an execution. So execution health regen is more so for the players that play execution with friends who can generally hold their own, and for the 1v1 situation. Because in any situation where you are getting double teamed, it works if you are the one double teaming, but if you are being double teamed, execution health regen doesn't really help too much unless you execute the second person after you killed the first. Now, we will go on to revive speed. Revive speed essentially dictates how fast you can pick up a teammate. So you've seen those players out there that pick up a teammate literally in less than a second, where if you are not sitting on top of their body 24/7, they will be picked up. So this is a key feature if you are breaking in Dominion and your teammate got put down but was not executed. Say they went down from bleed or kunai or some ranged weapon but didn't get executed, or in execution if they were not, or elimination, and were not executed in elimination. So that way you can rush to your teammate and pick them up in a very timely manner. Because if you have very low revive speed, like if it's in the negatives, you will not be the go-to person to pick up a teammate, because that bar will move alarmingly slow if it is low. So next, we will go into the third piece of attack equipment, which depends on the character. For a Centurion, it is the guard. But for this, we will go into revenge gained and revenge mode attacked. Now, the interesting thing about this is putting these two together on one piece of equipment, because that means you legitimately have to make a choice with this option. And this is where the cool key features of splitting up the attack onto 3 different pieces comes into play here. Because if you, for example, have the attack here in the negative, but have revenge gain and revenge mode attack in the positive, you will be gaining revenge you'll be gaining revenge faster, and when in revenge mode, you'll be doing a lot more damage. However, if you have this in the negative and these two in the positive, then it cancels out, or it can cancel out, so that way you're not losing as much attack, instead of beforehand where you could have defense and revenge, I believe it was, on one piece, but then you lose all of your attack. No, it was defense and stamina, where you could have defense and stamina for days, but you would have 0 attack. With this system, it is now possible to have a unique build more tailored to your set. So you can literally have yourself being an assassin who can't take much damage, but can pierce enemy defenses, doing massive damage, getting through that thick husky defense if they have it up there really high. And on top of that, you can have it so your revenge is gained more often, so that way, if you do get into those 2v1s a lot, you can have that revenge pretty much at your beck and call. It makes the gameplay a lot more interesting and makes it much more unique to each player instead of to each character. So that way you can have multiple playstyles for the same character. It's pretty nice. Now, next we will go into the defense columns, which is defense, exhaust recovery, debuff resistance, revenge mode defense, and revenge mode duration. And finally, to top it all off, stamina cost reduction and stamina regen. First, we will start with exhaust recovery. Exhaust recovery means how fast are you getting stamina when you have completely run out. When the bar goes white and you have that black and white screen, you're breathing heavy, you can't really throw attacks, but you can still counter parry, or you can still counter guard break, parry, all of that, kind of hobble away. Exhaust recovery makes sure you get your stamina faster when you get into that state. So if you have high exhaust recovery, it means if you ever do get into the white zone, which it does happen, it will get you out of it much faster than hopefully your opponent is. Now, debuff resistance is probably the most underrated one to a lot of For Honor players because they don't know fully what it is. Debuff resistance in Season 2 has become even more important because if you have that in the negative, debuff resistance is affecting bleed, poison, or whatever you want to call it, bleed or poison, stun grenades, fire, and flashbangs. It will affect how long those last or how much damage you take from those. So if you have your debuff resistance in the negative and you get hit by a fire grenade or thrown into the fire or hit with bleed, you will be taking massive amounts of damage. An alarming amount, to be, in fact. Like, we're talking one hit could potentially take one full bar each. Like, each individual hit with bleed could take one full bar. And stacking that on top of each other, because usually when you get hit with bleed, it's not just that one attack, it's 2 or 3. That can be almost an insta-kill to some characters. So debuff resistance is the unsung hero preventing you from dying from bleed or fire as fast. So next up, we got revenge mode defense and revenge mode duration. These both, I hope, are self-explanatory to you. Revenge mode defense is how much defense you gain in revenge. So, in addition to popping revenge, your armor rating, your defense rating, is now replaced with your revenge mode defenses, along with getting that second layer of health. So, if you have this in the negative, and your defense stats are in the positive, however, you will be taking a lot more damage while in defense mode, or while in revenge mode, but you have that extra bar of health. So, that is a thing to think about before you stack up revenge mode defense against yourself, putting it in the negative like I have. Now, revenge mode duration is pretty self-explanatory there. It explains how long revenge mode lasts. So, it lasts 11% longer, which is roughly about 5 seconds. So, not the most helpful thing in the world, but not terrible. Next, we'll go into stamina cost reduction, and then finally stamina regen. Stamina cost reduction essentially is, however, with each swing you do, with each swing, throw, kick, whatever you do, it takes stamina. You take a certain amount of your stamina bar and you chunk it to an attack. Stamina cost reduction decides how much you take. If it's in the negative, you will be taking more stamina with each swing, where if it's in the positive, your swings can be cut upwards to almost in half in stamina cost, thus making your stamina bar run out less, making you be able to stay in the fight a little longer. Now, stamina regen is also kind of similar to self-explanatory. Whenever you are not swinging, not being hit, and not sprinting or rolling, your stamina regens. Depending on how much stamina you regen, if it's in the positive, it will regen faster, and if it's in the negative, it will regen slower. So, my whole build here is a little bit of defense with high exhaust recovery and high debuff resistance, with high revenge mode duration, very low revenge mode defense, low stamina cost reduction, high stamina regen, and then low attack with high defense penetration, with also revive speed not very high. So what my class is set up for right now is bulky characters who have a lot of health and a lot of defense. I will be an aggressor onto them with getting through the defenses with the defense penetration and racking up damage with my fast stamina regen and my exhaust recovery. So even if I do run out of stamina, I get it back quicker than most people, thus making me have a better chance of surviving. Let's go into another example here with my 144 character, my Conqueror. His build is rather different from my Centurion's build. As you can see here, his exhaust recovery is 38 plus 38%. So he gets his stamina back really fast if he goes into the white. But on top of that, he also has plus 22 stamina cost reduction, so he can just keep getting those unblockables, heavies, real harm to himself. On top of that, he also has rather high stamina regen. And on top of that, he also has extremely high attack with defense penetration and execution health regen. This means my Conqueror does not have a defensive build, but he has a high offensive build that is very rewarding to me if I can get my executions off. Because my execution health regen is plus 27.6%. That is roughly 2 bars of health I'm getting, almost 4 bars of health I'm getting back per each execution. Because you get about 1.5 to 2 bars. I misspoke earlier when I said only 1. So, set up in gear, your whole entire build is much more unique, much more personalized to your play style. You can have much more character development, character gear score. You can have like subclasses almost to your main class. Like I'm a Conqueror who has a lot of health, but on top of that, Conquerors aren't really known for their damage. But I am a hard-hitting Conqueror with only subpar defense. So I will be using my shield a lot to keep me from taking that damage. However, I will still be taking a lot of damage from my negative 50 almost block damage. Negative 50% block damage. So, when you're making your builds, be very careful how you decide to do them, because it can come and bite you in the ass. But this has just been the simple basics, just to give you a little taste of builds and all of that. If you want to keep going further into this, sometime in the future there will be a second video coming out called setting up builds or something like that. How to make a build tailored to your play style, making it much more unique to how you play. But other than that, I have been your host, GSmith624. I hope this video has been helpful to you in understanding how the For Honor mechanics work now, with stat score and all of that, and makes it a little simpler for you to understand and get your gear set up properly. Farewell, and I'll see you